Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. My name is Davian Leslie. I work here at the Teaching Council as Chief Professional Development Officer. Let me welcome you to this space. Let me thank you for joining us. Whether you're joining us here on Zoom or perchance you are enjoying this session from our YouTube feed, or perhaps you're even joining us on one of our many social media pages. Wherever it is that you are participating in this session from, I thank you for being with us, and I want to welcome you and commend you for showing the kind of commitment to your professional development so that you have found it useful and necessary to be a part of this activity. This afternoon, we have gathered here so that we can speak about an issue that has become front and center in education in recent times. That issue, of course, is the issue of technology and access. It is an issue that even the most stubborn among us has realized the urgency of embracing. And therefore, it is not surprising to me that so many persons are here in this Zoom room, as well as those persons I know who are in the YouTube chat or the YouTube channel, as well as those persons who are on social media. This afternoon, we have gathered some panelists from different organizations who will share with us from their perspective. I'll just quickly introduce them by their names and their organization, and I will go around and do a quick sound check with them so that I can be certain that they are here and that they are good to go. These organizations, we felt, were organizations that were on the cutting edge of developing initiatives and innovations that will assist with the technological challenges that we are having here in Jamaica now, and with the issue of responding to the COVID-19 challenges. These organizations, these organizations have all
1,000.
these organizations have all, I'm sorry guys, let me just mute all participants because I think there are some disturbances.
And use the code 289292. Quickly do that on your phone or on your computer. Just go to a new tab and do that. Describe
Okay.
yourself. Here I'm giving.
There's definitely somebody's mic who I'm trying to find in the chat.
Are you seeing the instruction at the top? I'm hovering over it. Go to www.menti.com and use this code and just respond to me.
Sorry guys, let's just try to sort out.
So far, okay.
It's also possible that somebody who is in this session
engaging
is running another session on their computer, and that's perhaps causing some audio interference. So you perhaps need to
keep them rolling.
There definitely though is somebody who's, I can't find the person whose mic is open.
And of course you can use the chat to answer.
I'm hoping that the problem has been resolved. Right, sorry about that, indeed. So I think we're all now good to go, right? So I was saying earlier that the aim of this discussion is to identify what are the technological opportunities, and I'm saying opportunities because it's easy to say challenges, but I'm saying opportunities that are now confronting us, and how can Jamaica as a society, as an economy, managing a young education system, take advantage of these opportunities. Joining us this afternoon is a representative from the Caribbean Maritime University. That's Miss Erica Simmons. Erica, I will allow you to, I'll just do a sound check with you in a minute. Ativ Ennis is representing Digicel Jamaica. Ativ Ennis. I know Ativ
Yeah,
is
I'm here. I'm here.
Great. We also have Miss Jen Clacken from the Caribbean Examination Council. There's also Mr. Keith Smith from eLearning Jamaica, and representing the Early Childhood Commission is Miss Michelle Campbell. I'm just going to quickly go through each participant and do a little sound check to make sure that everybody is okay. Let me start with Erica. Erica, I'm sure I've made you co-host, so you should be able to unmute. So just go ahead and unmute and tell us something interesting.
Well, good afternoon, Mr. Leslie. It's my pleasure to be here with everybody, and I'm looking forward to partaking in the discussion.
Great. Thank you very much. Welcome, Erica. Let me skip down to Jen.
Good afternoon, Mr. Leslie and everyone. I'm happy to be here. Looking forward to the discussion as well. It's promising to be quite engaging and rich. So, thank you.
Indeed. Great. Welcome, Ms. Clacken. Mr. Smith, I know I saw a message from you earlier indicating that you might have some challenges because something has come up at work, but I'm glad to see that you're here.
I'm actually here, but the problem is we're in the emergency procurement of thousands of devices. So PPC has made himself available this afternoon. So I have to do that call as soon as they call me.
All right, no problem. Great. Mr.
Good afternoon, by the way.
He's from eLearning Jamaica. So I understand he's having a rapidly changing afternoon. So we'll have to let him go as soon as it becomes necessary, but welcome nonetheless.
Thank you.
Mr. Smith. Michelle Campbell, Early Childhood Commission. Did I make you co-host?
Good afternoon,
indeed. Michelle, you're a little muffled or a little low. Let's try again.
Okay, good afternoon. Can you hear me?
That sounds better. Thank you very much, Michelle. And this afternoon, our panel discussion is going to be anchored by Dr. Lisa Facey Shaw. We're blessed to have her with us. Dr. Facey Shaw possesses over 17 years of experience teaching at the tertiary level. She's currently a senior lecturer in the School of Computing and Information Technology at the University of Technology, Jamaica. She holds a PhD in the field of technology, enhanced learning from the Open University of the Netherlands, and has research interests in the areas of digital badges, distance education, innovation, and computing education. We are more than blessed to have Dr. Facey Shaw with us. Welcome, Dr. Shaw. I will turn over to you in a minute, but before I do, I just want to remind my participants, my teachers, that this is being streamed to YouTube and to other platforms that we have. The truth is, I see no reason why your cameras must be on. And so I'm saying this because very often we have challenges with teachers and with participants really, who forget that their cameras are on, and we have significant mishaps and so on. So I'm just going to ask you to be aware of the fact that this is a professional space and that we are asking you to monitor your mics and your camera. At the moment, your mics are all muted. So I don't anticipate that we will have any challenges with that, but your cameras might be on. So just pay attention to your camera and make sure that you're not showing us anything that you wouldn't want the world to see, because this will remain on YouTube for posterity. Towards the end of the session, we will ask you to share with us and to ask questions if you have any. You can use the chat during the presentations and during the discussion if you wish. And at the end also, you can make those questions known there. But of course, if you wish, you can use the raise hand feature when the time comes to ask questions if you have any. I think I've said all that I need to say. Let me just turn over quickly to Dr. Facey Shaw because we have a lot to get through and we don't have a lot of time. Dr. Shaw?
Hi, good afternoon, Mr. Leslie. Good afternoon, panelists. Good afternoon, everyone.
All right, so I'm going to mute my mic now. So you are up now, Dr. Shaw. Go ahead.
All right, and thank you for this opportunity. As Mr. Leslie just said, we don't have a lot of time, so let's just get right into it. And today we are here, right? And we're looking at the need that we have to change the way we structure schools in response to the changes brought about by the digital age. Certainly, we have a lot of curricula around the world, Jamaica's included, that now have in place an instructional philosophy that places premium on critical thinking, creativity, communication, and collaboration. And when we think about it, we see that changing the way we teach is not the same as changing school as an institution. And you may have some persons who may argue that we cannot change the way we teach until we change schools. And so we want to have a conversation with our panelists today, just to hear from them some of the issues that we have to speak about. And these would be such that, do we think enough is being done to move education into the digital age in Jamaica? And aside from changing our curriculum, what are some of the areas that you think would need more concentrated effort if Jamaica, or if education rather, in Jamaica is to become more 21st century ready? So in a while, we're going to have our panelists just share for perhaps about 3 to 4 minutes on this. And just to remind you, it's our forum discussion, dive into the digital age. If you want good, you know it's happy run. So let's just start off with, let's see, we have Michelle Campbell, I believe it is, from Early Childhood Commission. Michelle, if you could start us off by just sharing with us your perspectives on whether Jamaica is ready for the digital age and what more can be done.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. So at the early childhood level, just to give you a quick profile, we have 2,708 institutions across the country, serving over 250,000 children with a total of 12,370 practitioners. So in terms of are we doing enough? We are doing, and we continue to do. At the early childhood level, we know that our activities, our interactions must be hands-on. They must be face-to-face with materials. And it's how now we become creative as well as maintaining appropriateness while we're interacting and offering various experiences for our children. So I would have seen the live stream video looking at the Early Childhood Commission, what we've been doing with technology. We're upgrading our infrastructure to serve our institutions, to serve our practitioners. We're customizing our softwares so that we would be able to get a greater reach to our practitioners. One being, we have totally moved on to online training and online workshops with our practitioners. We know that this is what's really needed. We have resource centers in every parish that we continue to upgrade so that we have avenues for our practitioners to go to interact with children and families. Now, in terms of, can you hear me?
We're hearing you.
In terms of teaching and learning, the curriculum lends itself already to collaboration, to critical thinking. So we continue to install smart boards. We do have tablets. Now, we do not recommend screen time for children 0 to 2. So our 3 to 5-year-olds, their screen time that we're recommending is 1 hour. So we have broken up our daily schedule so that we can include both interactive, some screen time and some play time, so that we have that balance going forward. So it's depending on the environment and how we want to structure, how we use digital advances for our early childhood level is how we project to do that going forward. So we have to become a little bit more creative in what we're doing with what we're doing so that we have the appropriateness in the teaching and learning and development continues to occur. Thank you.
All right, thank you for that. Mr. Ennis from Digicel, would you like to go ahead and just share your perspective?
Sure, thank you. Good afternoon, again, fellow panelists and persons listening and watching on the YouTube channel. I think for a very long time in Jamaica, and I've seen this not just across the spectrum of early childhood, primary level, secondary, all the way up to tertiary level teaching, there has been less of a focus on the outcomes that we want to achieve rather than the methods that we use to actually impart information. And by that, I mean, we have gone through a transformation, and maybe COVID has accelerated some of the things that we're actually experiencing now, where we have not for a very long time been teaching the way students learn. And what we find in the technology space is that students are actually, our kids are actually born technology literate. We've seen, for example, 2- and 3-year-olds, they can take a tablet or a cell phone, and with very little instruction, they can navigate quite quickly, you know, and it has been a paradox for a very long time, where people have tried to understand what is it about these young kids that trigger that kind of stimulation that cause them to behave in a certain manner. And I think we have to bring that paradigm to the kinds of outcomes that we're looking for in education. So now that we're going through a pandemic and it is forcing behavioral changes, how do we incorporate technology as an enabler to drive the educational outcomes, but at the same time, not compromising the natural development that we want our children to have? And I think Michelle spoke about that from the early childhood education, the importance of balance. So from our side, we're enabling the environment to facilitate all that needs to happen with different types of technology, with fiber, with 5G and LTE technology to enable the environment for teaching. But the most important aspect of it is defining what, as a country, what outcomes do we want to see from our education system. Another identified challenge that I'm seeing as well is, for many years, we see our best teachers, they've been in the classroom for 25, 30, 35 years, and they just leave with that reservoir of knowledge. There is no mechanism in place to curate that knowledge in a way and structure it so that it can be reused, it can be accessed, it can be leveraged to help enhance teaching methods for even younger teachers who may be struggling with certain methodologies to impart knowledge in the specific areas of math and language and science and so on and so forth. So I think it's important that we set a content repository, and I know Keith is doing a lot of work in that space in e-learning, where, yes, are you guys hearing me? You're hearing me, right?
Yes, hearing you now.
Okay. Yes, so I'm saying,
yes, we are. Just those challenges with technology.
Yes, so I think Keith from e-learning is doing a lot of work in this space, but a part of how we can support the initiative is help to build that content repository where we can now start centralizing not just education, curriculum-based content that is certified by the Ministry of Education, but non-curriculum-based content that can supplement some of those teaching methodologies, and then allowing for the endpoint devices to actually interact there. So not placing the emphasis on endpoint devices like tablets and cell phones and laptops and so on, but placing a lot more emphasis on the delivery mechanism, as well as the content repository, to make sure that that level of enrichment is taking place and that the access that we're creating is kind of designed to give us the desired outcomes that we want as a country, and these young minds can start to make more meaningful contribution as they come up in society. So I think for us, the structuring public-private partnerships, making sure that the investments that we're making in our asset base going forward are designed for national support and national transformation, and making sure that we're aligned with some of the bigger outcomes that are being designed by the government going forward. And we're fairly happy to support in that area, and we're encouraged by some of the signs that we're seeing.
All right, thank you so much for that. And certainly there are some points that we want to flesh out a little bit later on. And as Michelle had spoken about the screen time where the children are concerned, I want to delve into some of those issues a little later. But let me just ask Keith Smith from eLearning Jamaica, especially as he has some time constraints, just to go ahead and share with us his views on where it is that we are and how we can move education into the digital age.
So thanks. I support everything. I support everything so far that both speakers have said. And one of the challenges that e-learning's mandate is to infuse technology into the teaching and learning process. I've been here for about a couple of years now, and one of the challenges that I had when I came in was that we had a very linear program, 6,000 tablets a year, 7,000 tablets a year. As a matter of fact, the program I took over was going to deliver 76,000 tablets in 9 years, 10 years. Well, actually this year we're going to deliver 65,000 in 1 year, because what COVID has done is forced, the pandemic has a lot of benefits. Well, just a sec. Sorry, guys, the pandemic has a lot of benefits. And some of the benefits that the pandemic will give to the country is that it has accelerated the need for the technology investments. So when we were thinking about putting in 7,000 tablets a year, well, this year we're going to do 65,000 tablets at least so far. And I'm actually the meeting I'm trying to go to now is to try and put another 20,000 tablets out there. We're going to put 15,000 laptops in the hands of students, because the biggest issue in this whole digital education is devices and connectivity. We can talk about content, and we're putting some work on repositories. We can talk about the curriculum support software, all that sort of stuff. But if the students don't have devices, and if they have no access to the internet or networking connections, then those things don't work. So we have a real problem in terms of digital divide. So one of the things that you'll find is that what COVID is now doing is forcing the education industry to become agile. So whereas you'd have policies that you would develop for a year or two, and then you would take 6 or 7 years to implement it, COVID means you collapse that entire thought process into 2 months. So what you'll find happening now is a lot more decisions are being made to accelerate the pace of the investment. I mean, this year alone, just from the e-learning perspective, we're spending about $2.6 billion. 2.6 billion Jamaican dollars on devices. That's what we're spending this year. And when we spend that, we still don't crack the problem, because you still have 50 or 60% of the students without any access at all. So the challenge is real, but also the opportunities are great. So I tend to look at the glass being half empty rather than being half full. I see the opportunities. I see the fact that COVID means that every child is going to get a device, and in another week, you will hear a significant announcement from the government about public sector, private sector partnership to get devices in the hand of the children. It means wherever children are, they need access to the internet. So one of our challenges so far is that when you think about networking service for children, we have been focused on the schools. So the schools are now closed. So the children need access in the Wi-Fi, in the community space. But how many parents can afford the cost of Wi-Fi? My friend Ative at Digicel, how many parents can afford the cost of Wi-Fi services? So what you're going to have to do now is that the government is going to have to step in and find a halfway house between the commercial companies earning a return on their investment, but the government providing some sort of discount or cost savings so that the average Jamaican child can get access. So one of the things that we're doing at e-learning, we're going to focus on more devices. We're going to focus on working with the providers on the telco, on the networking connections, community Wi-Fi. But more importantly now is the repository that AT spoke about. We're actually upgrading our repository, and we're going to make a repository available within, I'd say, 3 or 4 months to a variety of educational institutions. So this will be the central hub in Jamaica for e-content, whether curriculum, and also AT spoke to non-curriculum. So for me, the pandemic represents an opportunity. What we need to find a way just to stay alive through this process. But what the pandemic does, it is going to force all of us, from both the private and the public sector, to put the investments in place now so that our children and our teachers have access to the digital tools that are needed. So I think coming out of the pandemic, the transformation of the education sector is going to be rapid. I was having a conversation with the education minister 2 nights ago, and she's actually of that same view. She said, look, we think what the pandemic do is leave a different type of educational platform in Jamaica. So to me, it's just an opportunity for us to do what we were planning to do, but to do it faster, understanding that we need to get results now.
All right, thank you, Mr. Smith. Certainly, the technology challenges are great, and as you just mentioned, it is widespread, not just any one dimension, but several things, and we do need several stakeholders to participate and to join together so that we can all address this problem, right? So let me just ask Ms. Erica Simmons now from Caribbean Maritime University, just to share with us some of your views on the issues that have been raised here.
Okay, good afternoon. Thank you, Lisa. Thanks for the opportunity to be here with everyone. Hello to all the teachers and educators online on YouTube. So we have been disrupted, right? Our education sector has been disrupted. It has been disrupted because of COVID, but really the transformation for digital technologies was going to impact our education sector. It was just a matter of time because we're seeing that disruption across all industries in the world. I think the interesting thing, as I continue to talk about as an education sector, I'm surprised that we weren't more prepared for the disruption, right, that is happening in the industry. Nonetheless, I do agree with the panelists previously that had stated that we are going to get tremendous benefit from the pandemic. So the pandemic is a very multifaceted thing, right? Of course, there's a whole aspect of the illness and finding the vaccine and all that good stuff. But there is this entire philosophy about the disruption that the pandemic caused. And yeah, I've been reading as well that the digital transformation has been sped up by about 7 years. So what the pandemic did in 10 months was speed up our transformation by about 7 years. Now, this is going to be a fantastic thing for us here in Jamaica. And because we've all sort of been equalized around the world, we're on a level playing field. And I think now is our opportunity as a nation to really focus our resources. One of the things that I notice here in Jamaica is that we like to do a lot of little things, right? And so when we want to have impact, we need to focus our resources on what we want to accomplish. What is the product that we want to produce out of our education sector now that the transformation has happened? Where do we go? And those are the things that we think about certainly as a university, because we're right to where the industry is going. So the disruption in industry is right there. We are normally being asked to provide skills and talent, right, for industry. So we're looking at how we focus on the future skills, how we're going to transform what we're studying at the university and make it more future focused, make it focused on the industries of the future where we see growth. So, for example, at the Caribbean Maritime University and the center that I'm responsible for, we're focused on the future of work. We're focused on all the new skill sets that we need to develop in our students. And at some point, we are going to have to make that transition fully to decide, number one, what do we want our human resources to be in the future? What industries do we want to go after? And the government will certainly have to make a strategy for us in the education sector, who is the sector that's responsible for our assets, our human assets, will have to step up and contribute. But I'm looking for a future where we can have skills in terms of artificial intelligence and data science. I am looking for a future where we can talk about Jamaica being skilled at robotics and automation, software development. We have a very creative people. So we can certainly get all of our artists and storytellers involved in the transformation and the growth of where industries are happening. So as a university, we're looking for the future and we're trying to make those investments in our equipment and our assets so that we can prepare our human resources for the future.
I think I was just muted a while ago. So thank you, Erica, for that. I mean, even though we have the challenges with the technology, and I'm sure the teachers can relate just to how students and themselves are facing some of these challenges, what you're describing really is opportunities that are available that we can tap into as we go forward into this digital age. So let me hear from Jen Clacker now from CXC. What are some of these areas that we need to concentrate our efforts on, and how really can we move into this digital age?
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for having me, and just want to say thanks on behalf of the Cabin Examinations Council and the CXC Learning Institute. Now, the other panelists would have covered quite a number of the pertinent issues, and in the interest of time, I just want to zero down on the question at hand for us and from me specifically. And so you're asking if we are ready, and there's a critical element that I think our area that we're not ready in. So we've covered the infrastructure, curriculum, teachers, students, technology readiness, governmental readiness. But I think also what is missing from the discussion, and the research bears this out, is that there is a level of leadership and management readiness that is lacking. Yeah. And we're talking about issues relating to just how schools handle this move into the digital divide. If our leadership and management structures support that move. So I was speaking recently with a group of teachers college faculty, and we spoke significantly about issues relating to our mission and vision, our strategy on the ground, the resources, the capacity of leadership. I've actually spoken to principals over the summer who were not looking forward to the online shift at all, because they tell me that they can't manage their staff in the online environment. They don't know how to hold them accountable in the online environment. So there is where we have some significant gaps as well. So we're talking about managerial tools that support this move into the digital divide: policies, procedures, processes, protocols, or support systems. What are the support systems we offer to our students apart from the devices and helping to get them access? What are the other support systems? Library, counseling, general student support, career support. How do we do that in the online environment or the virtual environment? There are some other managerial considerations. I alluded to one before: people management, decision making, change management. We've undergone some significant changes over the last couple of months, and we are set to even take that further. How do managers and leaders help their team to manage this change? Communication, time and project management, all of those managerial considerations, I think, have been left out of the equation. So yeah, we've been talking a lot about infrastructure. We've talked about the curriculum. We've talked about the teachers and so on. But for me, operational readiness, pedagogy, assessment, certification, evaluation, all of those rest heavily on managerial and leadership competencies. And those competencies for the online space look a little bit different from the face-to-face. And I don't think we've been investing enough time in getting our leaders and managers ready to lead and manage the systems in this new era. And that's where I'll break for now and take it up in the further discussion.
Right. And those are definitely considerations that need to be made. As you say, the leadership and the operational readiness, quite important things. But let me just continue with you, just to build upon that. What would you say are some of the initiatives and the measures that your institution has actually embarked on in the last few years to help Jamaica's education system to achieve this digital age upgrade?
Okay, so the Caribbean Examinations Council has been for some time embarking on what we call a digital transformation strategy. And we started that a couple of years ago. We started as early as, if persons in the room can remember, when we first introduced the move towards e-marking, and now we are moving into e-assessment. We've been working assiduously to streamline our operations to support work in the online environment. And that includes even from our daily office functions to just how we serve our clients. So even though I think many of your teachers in the room may be familiar with the CXC Learning Hub for example, which is our one-stop shop place to go to for all students, teachers, to get all the resources they need to support the work we do with our syllabuses and our examinations. And in the most recent months, we've been working towards virtual training. I tell you, we were just ahead of the COVID curve, because we had just started work on our CXE Learning Hub to move all of our training initiatives, every single one, into the online blended space. And shortly thereafter, COVID came, and it felt like we were just like we had this premonition about it. But you see, undergirding all of that is the work that we've been doing with our internal structures, our policies, our procedures, even aligning our mission and vision statement to support this kind of work. And I think that's where all institutions, ministries, everybody needs to go. I think we've not been doing very well at managing certain aspects of this COVID situation, and I share one example. In Jamaica, we've been moving our operations for school in the online space, but I don't think we've been giving enough thought to how that can really happen amidst all the other things that happen. So, for example, in Belize, I learned recently, they have instituted a kind of policy that says, hey, for online school, we will not go more than 4 hours a day. Yeah. And that allows everybody that opportunity to make that shift. I think right now we are moving in Jamaica, everything from the face-to-face to the online, but we need much more support around that. I think we need to, one of our panelists earlier said public-private partnerships. Can workplaces start a little later to allow parents to monitor their children just before they go to work, for example? These are the kinds of discussions we need to be having around this digital transformation. We need to lead it and not be led by it, So I hope that answered your question, Madam Facilitator.
Yes, definitely.
Madam
Mr. Smith?
Facilitator, I have some
Yes.
thoughts, and I really
Please go
like what
ahead.
Ms. Clacken said a while ago in terms of the operational readiness and the sports. And it's something we're looking at. For example, we're talking about digital transformation in education, and a lot of the conversation, as you rightly pointed out, has been on the access tools on the internet. But if you don't digitize the operations of the school in terms of making them agile with a school management and administration platform, we right now today, the majority of schools are running pen and paper. Yes. and workbooks, right? It's very hard to determine centrally how many students are in school at any one point in time. So this the concept of digital transformation of education goes beyond teaching and learning. And I'm actually about to tell you that we're in the process of putting out an RFP for school management systems for the public school system in general, because it's critical now. The question you ask about, how do they know when teachers are at school? Or do you know when students are there? Or do you know if the students is paying attention? Or do you know how many hours of online training the students get? So there's a need now to suddenly rapidly, if we, without COVID, would have probably taken another 3 years to put it to school management system. I bet you before the start of the next academic year, we have one up and running. Because again, I think it was the person from CMU, Mr. Simmons, I think Dr. Simmons, who said earlier that, that we have the collapse in the procurement time or the implementation time. 7 and 8 year programs become 6 months and 3 months program. So Ms. Kakan is right. The operational readiness of the schools. Now, I've fortunately for the last year, I've had the opportunity to engage a lot of school principals, both when I visit their schools as part of the learning's mandate, but also in the conversations that I have. And I remember in March when this thing came upon us, and I was in conversations with Dr. Pinnock down at Michael, and a lot of the principals were scared at that time, thinking, oh my gosh, how am I going to happen? No, I in the last week, I've been in Brownstown, I've been in Avalon, in Alexandria, I was in Montego Bay yesterday with school principals at Barretttown and Glendevon. You believe it or not, you'll be surprised at how much already these schools have become now and what they've achieved in 6 or 7 months. So the thing is, the pandemic has created this opportunity, but it is a correct thing to say. Apart from enhancing the capabilities of the leaders and their skills, we also have to give them the right tools to manage in this digital environment, because you're no longer going to be able to mark a register and say, oh yes, you were in class today. So you have to have another mechanism to determine that. Punctuality also becomes a bigger issue in the online world. You know, a teacher was late for 10 minutes or a student was late for 10 minutes. Usually the manual just wait on the wall. No, when you're late in the online world, you're actually late. So there's a lot of changes to our culture, our habits, and our attitude, and we have to give them the right system. So I agree with that point completely.
And let me just follow up with Erica Simmons here, because one of the things that has happened, you know, with this whole COVID is that we've been forced to get here a little earlier than some of us thought we would have. And, you know, is there something fair, Erica, in terms of our administrators and our teachers? I mean, you know, what's the kind of legacy? You know, Mr. Smith was just sharing that some schools are, you know, are ready, and, you know, definitely others aren't. I mean, I see some teachers mentioning here, even the chat, that, you know, they're experiencing severe problems and so on. And in a while I'll bring in Atif. But, you know, what kind of legacy, Erica, are we leaving, you know, with respect to COVID-19 and how technology is being used to deliver learning?
Well, I would say if we don't get it right, we're going to severely hurt our country, right? There's already been estimates that COVID could put our education sector back by a year. So thinking about every student's learning being stopped or arrested by a year, that has really, really big impact on our GDP, our ability to produce on behalf of our country. So we have to watch that very, very carefully. Secondly, I think we probably have to set a benchmark, right, as to where we want schools to be. We know that some schools are going to surpass that benchmark because they have further capability to do that. But I think we have to identify a minimum standard that we want our schools to meet in terms of online learning. And some of the things you've said before, I think are dead on. I don't believe that we can take the model that we've had in the physical world and plop it into the digital world. The things like the time that we are spending in front of the screen, we have to look at, right? We are going to have to look at how we are interacting with each other, how we're going to handle courses that need online hands-on treatment. So we are going to really have to look at how that is being implemented. We might have to look at some of our curriculum and say that we're doing too much and we want to focus maybe our curriculum on certain things, right? When I look at what we ask our students to learn, we're asking them to learn a lot, and we want them to be very, very smart, of course, but maybe that's not the best use of our resources, right? And we want to make sure that we have people that at a minimum can read, write, and do math and have some digital skills. So we're going to have to see how we create benchmarks. There are going to be certain schools that are going to have to work harder to reach the benchmark than others. But I think a more creative viewpoint on how we're going to work together and do the education sector now is in order. And because we have this disruption, my thought is, why do we have to have any barriers on what we want our education sector to look like in the future? It's the perfect opportunity now to reimagine what that might look like. And I can tell you, I am serving on behalf of the Jamaica Education Transformation Commission, just appointed by Prime Minister Holness. And I want to tell you that we're having these discussions. These discussions are being had, and the commissioners that I work with, we're really focused on, now that we have this pause, and if we closed our eyes and we wanted to imagine what the most perfect education sector was going to be for our students, our parents, the teachers, everyone involved, we want to do that now because we feel like that is the perfect time for us to do that. So I can assure you that we're looking at equity, how people in the most remote parts of our country are going to access the internet. We are going to look at things, and it's not just that. We're not even considering things like the abilities and disabilities of people. I mean, is working on the internet and online. I mean, we have people that that's not going to be a medium for them to be able to be productive in. So we're going to have to think very multifaceted. but I think it is an exciting opportunity, and it's time for our whole country to get excited about this. This is not, and I always talk about education, we cannot make this a political partisan thing, because this is for our country, this is for the production, and it's just a great time to be alive. And I hope everybody gets that excitement about the future now, that we can actually change now. We have this opportunity, this window has been opened for us graciously, and now we have to go. We have to make that move to the window.
All right, certainly interesting there. And for this window, Etive, is this something that all our stakeholders can benefit from? Are we marginalizing some persons so that they don't have the kinds of opportunities, right, that technology can certainly deliver? I mean, we know of the benefits and so on, improving engagement, facilitating collaboration, but those kinds of economic gaps, particularly as we try to integrate technology in education, is it just the wealthy persons who are able to benefit from this? How can we ensure that the rest, all of us participate and benefit?
Right. So yeah. So I think at a starting point, we all know that we're all created equal, but some of us are created more equal than others. So there's always going to be this economic gap where persons who have more resources will be able to purchase additional things, and maybe their children would get a distinct advantage in terms of going forward. And I think that's where the balance between the public and private sector would come in and play an integral role, because the government has to take that on as an integral part of the transformation that needs to take place in our economy. And I'll say this, I look at education a little bit differently, probably because I'm not an educator per se. And coming from the business world, we look at education within the spectrum of outcomes. And in doing that, you're actually creating human capital facets in a space that will transform your developmental goals. And I think as a starting point, as a country, we need to decide very carefully, and I think we've started that process, but we probably need to accelerate it, to decide what do we want to be good at? And we do not have the critical mass to be all things to everybody, so we have to create niche industries. And if in those niche industries, we recognize that there are skills gaps that we need to start socializing our education programs in a particular way to get those outcomes, then that's what we need to do. And this is the right time to do it. In the disruption and the transformation that needs to take place, it is the best opportunity for us to make those bold steps and create those bold and implement those bold ideas that's going to get us to where we want to be. That being said, though, I think it's important that we create a level of equity in the system. And I think it is unfortunate that we're at a stage where our students do not have access to what we consider to be a basic right. Internet is no longer a privilege; it's a right for students to actually have. And we in the industry, we're trying our best, to work with the different stakeholders to actually bring the cost down, to make sure that in instances where we can give it away free, we do that. But at the same time, in order for us to continue our rate of and pace of investment in a capital intensive world, we need to make sure that there is sufficient economic activity taking place for us to subsidize those students who may not be who may be disadvantaged as a result of their economic status. So I think the public-private partnership is going to underpin a lot of those big ideas that we need to go forward with. And we stand ready to support whether it's the new education commission that has been set up by the Prime Minister, whether it's key stakeholders like e-learning, whether it's key stakeholders like CXC and so on. All of the key stakeholders in this education ecosystem, we stand ready to support and to leverage all of our assets and our mind share to make sure that our children have the best learning experience.
But I'd love to add something. Is that, can I add something here?
Go ahead.
Yeah, because if you said some good points, and this point about public-private partnership, we've always looked at the internet and devices and the technology as something that private capital builds and gets a return. And the thing is, when you think about Jamaica, I think we're like 36% internet penetration now. And
Yes.
the truth is, the other 64% really don't have the resources to pay for the internet. So this is where now the government is stepped in. And if you listen to the policies that have been articulated and announced by the education minister, we now see it is as a right that every child should have access to the internet.
Yes.
So before it used to be if I could pay for it. Now it is the government saying, hey, we're going to have to find a way to pay for it. Because the type of learning, the digital transformation, and to get some of these communities in the rural part, especially in the mountainous areas of Jamaica, to bring up their students now to be ready for the 5th industrial revolution, the government now has to invest. And if you listen to the sounds that are coming out of the education minister and the prime minister, the government is prepared to make this investment. So the policies are now changing. So what you see now, whereas before there was a limited budget, that would be made available to provide resources and technology and internet. The government is now saying, hey, we're going to pay some more. Because without this, children are going to be left behind. I mean, I don't see school going back to normal. Everybody goes to school 5 days a week in the future. I think we're going to be blended for a long time to come.
Yeah.
And that will also ease the pressure on the government building new facilities.
And I mean, I'm sure, the teachers would agree with you, because I've seen some of the comments and, persons are speaking about the connectivity as the biggest challenge, particularly in some of those rural areas. And I mean, certainly even across the country, we see, just challenges general with connectivity. So we do need to get that partnership going so that we can have some of this going on. But just before, time is running, but I just wanted to go back to Michelle Campbell from the Early Childhood Commission here, because a lot of times, sometimes the focus is on whether university education or at the higher levels or the secondary levels, but particularly for children. And you did mention before, Michelle, about screen time. And I just wanted to pick up on that, because our early childhood educators may feel a little left behind, and the parents now of those children, right? Is it that they should have cause to be apprehensive about the screen time that the students have to face? I mean, earlier Jen mentioned about 4 hours online in Belize, and for our parents here, what are some of those safeguards that can be put in place to ensure that the children benefit from the digital age but don't lose out on the negative associations with screen time?
So what we've done is we would have shared a general schedule as to how to break out that 1 hour window. We know that screen time is not appropriate because the brain is not yet developed, right? So that brain is not ready to see those graphics and to hear those sounds. You need to hear the natural sounds of the adult, that caring, loving adult that's building that nurture and that trust for that child to really begin to learn. So when we look at screen time, the recommendation is 1 hour. However, we've broken it out into that 1 hour window where we have a 15-minute activity, and then we take a screen break is what we're calling it, for another 15 minutes, and we go back into another activity. So we have music and movement, we have story time, we have a creative activity, we have outdoor play. But in between all of those activities, we're breaking up that particular screen time with the adults. So this alleviates being face-to-face for that constant long period of time. And there's more interaction with the adult, and then the adult that's right next to that particular child while the teacher is face-to-face on the screen. So it's how we bring in that natural environment, and to the routines and the rituals that we find. We have to go to the bathroom, we have to take a break, we have to eat something, we have to go to lunch. These different types of activities help that child to maintain that consistent routine that we're so used to at the early childhood level that really supports development and learning. So we want to, as best as possible, balance the two, like I've been saying along the way.
All right, thank you for that. Do we have any questions?
Lisa,
yes, Erica.
Just wanted to add to that a little bit and just talk about that it's not only screen time. It's actually, we're going to have to be concerned with the safety of our children on the internet, okay? Digital literacy is going to be very, very important, and we're going to have to teach our children that the internet is a very dangerous place. The UN Secretary General has just come out with a report that just talks about all of the things that are happening on the internet. All of the ethics and companies that are collecting information from children and all of that stuff. So parents and teachers are also going to have to really, really integrate this concept of digital literacy, safety, and privacy on the internet as well.
All right, yes, definitely. Do we have any one or two questions from our participants here for our panelists? See, our time is running out, but we could perhaps just, if Mr. Leslie would allow, one question from the panelists. I don't know if any has.
Sure. I know I see a hand up. Omar Tomlinson. I'm going to grant you permission to unmute Omar. If you have a question or comment, I see your hand is up. Do you want to go ahead and ask that question or comment now? You're muted, Omar. Let me go ahead, unmute Omar.
Okay, good evening, everyone. I have a comment rather in terms of the improving or expanding the internet connectivity. We know that is going to require infrastructural development on the end of the service providers. Now, considering especially the season we are now in, that form of development is going to be impeded. We're in the hurricane season, rainy season. So getting out on the field to do all of those things are going to impede us and delay some stuff. So, I mean, how do we work around that? Because the infrastructure is necessary for the internet connectivity to take place. Jamaica is mostly mountainous, and we have a lot of communities in the mountainous areas. And teachers have indicated that, especially in those rural areas, the difficulty in connectivity, and when you check with the service providers, they have indicated the difficulty in the installing the infrastructure in those areas. So how do we work around that in terms of trying to get that up? Another point to bring up is the screen time and the health, what would say now, factors associated with the constant sitting in front of the computer, things like that. So I believe apart from the education in safety on the net and so forth, there need to be computer what you call it, ergonomic training, things like that, because I see right now the possibility of a lot of health implication, bad health practices coming from these increased screen time. I would agree that we shouldn't seek to try and have the same amount of time as we do FaceTime on screen.
All right, certainly. I don't know if Eti wants to just respond, and then we're going to just wrap up,
yes.
as the time has gone.
I'll take the question about the investments. An excellent question, and it's something that we grapple with all the time. The dynamics of how you deploy technology to support internet connectivity, especially in rural communities, that has changed, and it has evolved significantly over the last 3 to 5 years. And what we've found is that in those areas, going with a wireless option where you can actually leverage your mobile network and then basically bring a feed from whether it's a cell tower that you may have deployed in those rural areas to a central point, and then you basically spread out and have a point to multi-point kind of build out. So we have come up with creative ways to actually deploy a pretty robust type of service, and at the same time manage to keep the cost significantly lower than what we would have on the open market, and that will continue as we go on. As it relates to rolling out during the hurricane season, we have no control over the acts of God like that, so we just have to make sure that our teams are safe. And we plan and put contingencies in place to, as best as possible, accelerate those deployments to make sure that we can create access in those rural communities. But it's an excellent point that he made.
Lisa,
thank you for that.
Lisa, can I just add very quickly that the internet is just one way to access knowledge and information. We have several other ways to do that. And we have been hearing about education on the radio and the television. So we are going to have to take a very multifaceted approach to our strategy going forward. And the internet service providers, we're going to put pressure on them, but we have to now step up in other areas because the internet is one way to access knowledge and information.
Definitely. And even I was just speaking about the challenges faced by the rural areas. Those are some of the things that we need to look at. But ladies and gentlemen, our time is up. I see we've gone an hour, but certainly some of the conversations that have taken place just now are issues that we need to continue to have to discuss, right? I mean, there's so many different dimensions to this whole issue of getting Jamaica into the digital age. And we've seen issues about leadership and management, curriculum-based and non-curriculum-based content, those screen time and health-related and safety issues, as well as the infrastructure, right? And, certainly good recommendations coming forward in terms of what we need to look at. And I'm sure the different stakeholders, we call for the public-private partnership. I'm sure for the different stakeholders, these are things that will continue or we will continue to look at. Mr. Smith mentioned about some tablets that will be distributed soon. So I'm sure some of the teachers and students can look forward to things like those. But I really just want to thank you all for participating in this discussion. And I'll turn over to Mr. Leslie now as he will just take over. Thank you so much, panelists. Thank you, audience. I see persons mentioning in the chat about, those health and the phones, and one person mentioning, Mr. Smith, that his school has not gotten any tablets, so you may need to take a look at that. But thank you so much, everyone, and I turn over to Mr. Leslie.
Thank you very much, Dr. F.I.T, Sean, to my panelists. I know I told you that you'll be here for 1 hour, and we have certainly passed the 1 hour mark, and you have been gracious enough to give us a few minutes beyond that. And so I want to thank you. I want to thank you for preparing yourselves to be here, lending yourself to us for 1 hour. I know that even though it's a Friday, it is certainly busy everywhere. A few of the persons in the meeting have already indicated that they have another engagement that they have to rush off to. So I know you made a tremendous sacrifice, and I'm highly appreciative of that. Ms. Simmons from CMU, Michelle Campbell from the Early Childhood Commission, Mr. Atif Ennis from Digital Jamaica, Jen Clacken from the Caribbean Examination Council. I must tell you, Jen, that I especially liked your intervention. The truth is, even myself, as I reflected on what you said, I myself am guilty of that, in not always thinking about the leadership component, but focusing so much at the operational level and what needs to take place in the classroom. But I think that's a crucial point. And Mr. Smith, I am particularly pleased that you were able to join us for this discussion. Guys, I think that we certainly underestimated the amount of time that we would have needed. I think the 1 hour was certainly not enough for this. And so I think another time may have to come, may have to be organized for us to discuss some of these issues some more. To the teachers in the room, I know you have put some questions in the chat that forgive us. We were not able to get to all of them. To our colleagues over on YouTube, who I know asked some questions there, we have put them in this chat. And to be frank with you, either we weren't able to get to all of them. So please forgive us. We really needed another hour or so for this discussion. Dr. F.I.T Shaw, you and I would have been talking about this for a few days. I am very glad that you were able to make it. I think you lifted the session and you added value. I really appreciate your being here. And I thank you for, again, lending us your expertise and sharing your perspectives with us and taking us through this discussion. I should have mentioned as well that in the room with us today are other members of staff from the Teaching Council. In the interest of time, I won't necessarily ask anybody to share, but I know Mrs. Alison Cook Hawthorne, for example, is in the room. And I'm just using this method to acknowledge her. And if she opens her camera somewhere and wave, you perhaps can see her face, if that is something she can do where she is now. Again, teachers, I thank you for sharing with us. I thank you for joining us. And I am particularly pleased that on a Friday afternoon such as this, you were able to join us for this activity. Remember that in another 45 minutes, approximately at 3:15, we will have our final discussion using this modality for this afternoon. We're going to be looking on the issue of boys' education in school. The links for that have already been shared. If you were able to join us here, then it means that you also have the link for that activity. We invite you to come back and join us at 3:15 for that discussion. These are my final words to you. So let me just hope you have a blessed rest of the day, and remember to keep safe as COVID still a keep. All right, guys, we are going to end this meeting now. Again, thank you for being here, and we are logging off in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Bye-bye.